Japan's surrender in August 1945 marked the formal collapse of its vast wartime empire, an empire that had stretched across much of East and Southeast Asia under the banner of the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. For the Philippines, which had endured 3 years of brutal occupation from 1942 to 1945, liberation came at a staggering cost. Entire cities such as Manila lay in ruins, their once thriving communities reduced to rubble. The Battle of Manila alone claimed over 100,000 civilian lives, leaving deep scars on the Filipino psyche. The Japanese occupation had disrupted every aspect of Philippine life, from the economy and governance to social trust and cultural identity. Many Filipinos suffered from famine, forced labor, and violence, while others grappled with the moral complexities of collaboration and survival under occupation. When the Allied forces finally reclaimed the islands, the victory was both a moment of national relief and profound mourning. In the aftermath, Japan seemed utterly defeated. Its cities were bombed to ashes, its military disbanded, and its emperor stripped of divine status. The international community viewed Japan as a nation to be contained, not trusted. For many Filipinos, the memory of occupation fostered deep resentment and a desire to sever ties completely. Yet, history would unfold differently. Beneath the ruins of defeat, Japan's ambitions for regional relevance and leadership did not vanish, they merely shifted in form. With the guidance of U.S. occupation authorities and the pressures of Cold War geopolitics, Japan embarked on a remarkable process of reconstruction and reinvention. The nation redirected its energies from conquest to commerce, from military expansion to industrial innovation. In this transformation, Japan sought to rebuild not only its economy but also its image in Asia. It projected itself as a peaceful, industrious, and benevolent partner, a nation that could help its neighbors recover. In the decade following Japan's surrender, the Philippines and Japan faced the delicate task of rebuilding a relationship fractured by war. The memories of occupation were still raw, thousands of Filipinos had been executed, enslaved, or displaced, and the scars of destruction were visible across the archipelago. Public sentiment in the Philippines was strongly anti-Japanese, and for years after 1945, the idea of resuming formal relations seemed both politically and emotionally impossible. However, the shifting geopolitical landscape of the early Cold War created conditions that made reconciliation not only possible but necessary. The United States, now the dominant power in the Pacific, viewed Japan as a crucial ally against the spread of communism in Asia. American policymakers encouraged Tokyo to rebuild its economy and reintegrate into the regional order, a strategy that indirectly pushed Japan to normalize relations with its former colonies and occupied territories, including the Philippines. Negotiations between the two nations were difficult and drawn out. Filipino leaders demanded reparations for wartime damages, while Japanese officials, facing their own post-war struggles, sought a settlement that would allow economic cooperation rather than punitive compensation. After years of debate and diplomatic maneuvering, the two sides reached an agreement. On July 23, 1956, the Philippines-Japan Reparations Agreement was signed. Under its terms, Japan agreed to provide $550 million in reparations and loans over a 20-year period. But rather than paying in cash, most of this compensation took the form of goods, services, and infrastructure projects, a subtle but transformative choice. Through this arrangement, Japanese firms were directly involved in supplying machinery, constructing roads, building power plants, and training Filipino technicians. This process marked Japan's re-entry into the Philippine economy, but under a new guise, not as an occupying force, but as a development partner. The reparations program opened the door for Japanese corporations such as Mitsubishi, Marubeni, Sumitomo, and Hitachi to establish a foothold in key Philippine industries. These companies, once part of Japan's wartime industrial complex, now operated under the banner of post-war reconstruction and peace. To many Filipinos, these projects symbolized progress, the modernization of transport, energy, and agriculture, the promise of industrial growth, and the hope for recovery after years of devastation. Yet for others, the arrangement carried a different meaning. Critics noted that the reparations system effectively channeled money back into Japan's own economy, stimulating its export industries and strengthening its global trade position. In this sense, Japan's reparations strategy served a dual purpose. It repaired diplomatic ties while simultaneously advancing Japan's post-war economic revival. By the end of the 1950s, Japan had successfully rebranded itself in Southeast Asia. Through economic diplomacy, it had transformed from a former aggressor into a benefactor. the Philippine government, seeking investment and development, became a willing partner in this new relationship. What emerged was the foundation of an enduring pattern: Japan's use of economic influence as a substitute for political or military power. By the 1970s, Japan's presence in the Philippines had shifted from post-war recovery to a powerful form of economic influence. What began as reparations evolved into a system of trade, loans, and investments that positioned Japan at the center of Philippine development. Through official development assistance, ODA, and private investments, Japan financed major infrastructure projects, highways, ports, power plants, and industrial zones, while Japanese companies such as Mitsubishi, Marubeni, and Sumitomo re-entered the Philippine economy. These initiatives modernized the country and created jobs, making Japan its largest trading partner and investor by the late 1970s. However, this prosperity came with dependence. Much of Japan's aid was tied, meaning funds were used to hire Japanese contractors or import Japanese technology, ensuring that much of the money flowed back to Japan. The partnership, especially under Ferdinand Marcos, also reinforced unequal structures. Japan provided loans and projects that benefited its own industries while deepening the Philippines' reliance on foreign capital. By the 1980s, Japan's dominance was clear. It no longer ruled through force but through finance, an economic empire built on aid, trade, and technological power. While it helped modernize the Philippines, it also bound the nation's progress to Japan's economic agenda, raising questions about the nature of post-colonial independence and influence.